Most people are not poor because they are lazy. They are poor because the world is perfectly designed to keep them undisciplined, distracted, and always one emergency away from panic. You are told that wealth comes from talent, connections, or some big lucky break. You are shown lottery winners, overnight influencers, and miracle entrepreneurs. But the quiet truth is much simpler and much more boring. Wealth grows out of small, disciplined decisions made again and again, especially when you are tired, scared, or angry. The problem is that nobody profits from you becoming calm, stable, and hard to control. Employers need you anxious enough to obey. Advertisers need you impulsive enough to buy. The whole machine runs on people who cannot say no to their urges, their boss, or their bank. This is fog of work. Here we talk about how modern employment, politics, and economics trap ordinary people in a soft form of slavery. Today we are going to talk about why discipline is not about being a perfect worker. Discipline is what slowly turns you from a replaceable employee into a person who can walk away. We need to start with an uncomfortable distinction. Discipline and obedience are not the same thing. In fact, they are often complete opposites. Obedience is when you bend your life around someone else's agenda. You stay late because we all have to be team players. You accept unpaid overtime because this is a critical time for the company. You answer emails at night because that's just the culture here. You are dependable, but only for them. Discipline, on the other hand, is when you bend your life around your own long-term interests. You say no to a pointless project because it adds nothing but stress. You refuse a useless purchase because you care more about your future self than a moment of dopamine. You go to bed instead of scrolling, not because a manager told you to, but because you want to be clear-headed enough to think. Corporations love obedience and will happily call it discipline, but real discipline makes you less profitable and less controllable. It makes you more likely to leave when the deal is bad. That is why you are trained to confuse these two ideas from the very beginning. Look around, and you will see that everything is built to make discipline as hard as possible. Your phone is a casino that fits in your pocket. Your bank app has buy now, pay later buttons in friendly colors. Streaming services autoplay the next episode before you have a chance to ask yourself if you are tired, if you are broke, or if you should maybe take a walk. Then you add work on top of this. You drag yourself through a draining day, emotionally exhausted, mentally empty. When you finally get home, you do not have the energy for good decisions. You tap order again on your delivery app. You click add to cart because you feel you deserve something for surviving the week. The next morning, you wake up with a hangover of guilt and a smaller balance in your account. None of this is an accident. Undisciplined people are great customers and terrified employees. If your money leaks out through 1,000 tiny holes, if your attention is scattered, if your time is always spoken for, you become exactly what the system wants, tired enough to obey and desperate enough to stay. The formula for building wealth is embarrassingly simple. Earn more than you spend, keep the gap, invest the gap, repeat for years. That is it. No magic, no secret networking group, just arithmetic and time. But simple is not the same as easy. The real battle is not with the numbers. It is with everything that fights to close that gap. Rising rent, rising food costs, subscriptions you forgot about, social pressure to treat yourself, co-workers showing off new cars that are living on borrowed money. Employers quietly expect you to match the lifestyle of the title they gave you, so you stay dependent on the paycheck that come with it. If you ever try to increase your gap, you feel the current immediately. Friends ask if you are being cheap. Ads follow you around, reminding you of the thing you didn't buy. Even the company that pays you will run campaigns about supporting local businesses and living your best life that somehow always seem to end with you spending more. The arithmetic is simple. The environment is hostile. Discipline is what lets the math actually work in a world that is actively trying to break it. We usually talk about money and numbers, but the real cost of an undisciplined life shows up in your nervous system. It is the tightness in your chest when you open your banking app. It is the fear when rumors of layoffs start to spread. It is the knot in your stomach when an unexpected bill appears and you instantly think, I cannot handle this. When you live without financial discipline, every mistake at work feels like a threat to your survival. You tolerate a toxic manager because you can't afford to upset them. You accept unpaid nights and weekends because you have payments due. You drag yourself into a job that is burning you out because missing one paycheck would collapse your entire life. This is how lack of discipline becomes a tool of control. It is not about moral failure, it is about leverage. If you are always 1 month away from disaster, your employer owns you. They own your sleep, your health, your relationships, your dignity. You will swallow disrespect because you are terrified of what happens if you do not. Even a modest income, handled with discipline, can give more peace than a high income lived in chaos. The difference is not how loud your lifestyle looks on the outside, it is how loud your anxiety is on the inside. We are trained to see wealth as a collection of objects: a bigger house, a more expensive car, branded clothes, fancy vacations that exist mainly for social media, but real wealth is quieter. It looks like having a few months of expenses saved, so one email from your boss cannot ruin you. It looks like the ability to say no to a job offer that smells wrong. It looks like time. Evenings not owned by your company, mornings that don't start with panic, weekends that are not just recovery from work. Wealth is margin. It is the space between you and disaster. It is options. It is the ability to choose what you do next instead of grabbing at whatever pays fastest. And discipline is the engine behind that. When you start to define wealth this way, something shifts. Suddenly, that new car that would eat half your cash does not feel like success. It feels like chains. Suddenly, the promotion that demands your soul but offers a slightly bigger paycheck looks less like an opportunity and more like a trap. So what does discipline actually look like in practical terms, especially if you are not some high-paid executive? Sometimes it is as simple as refusing to let your fixed costs rise just because your salary did. You get a raise, but you do not instantly upgrade your apartment, your phone, your car. You give that raise a job, paying down debt, building an emergency fund, buying a little bit of freedom each month instead of a little bit of status. It can look like setting one non-negotiable rule for yourself, a certain amount that leaves your main account every time you are paid and goes into savings or investments before you even see it. Not after you spend, before. You treat your future self as a bill that must be paid. It can look like delaying gratification in small, unglamorous ways. Making coffee at home, cooking simple meals, saying no to the third streaming service. Not because you want to live a miserable life, but because each small no is buying you something far more valuable later. The ability to walk away from people who treat you badly. This is not about becoming a monk. It is about lowering the volume of financial fear so you can think clearly and choose. Discipline is not only about money, it is also about time and energy. You can be financially careful and still completely enslaved if your work owns every waking hour. Time discipline can start with a refusal to be always available. You close your laptop at the end of the day and you keep it closed. You do not reward late-night emails with instant responses. You stop volunteering for every stretch assignment that is just free labor in a different wrapper. Energy discipline can be choosing sleep over late-night scrolling, so your brain is actually capable of processing your life. It can be protecting one small block of time each week for your own projects, learning, or quiet thinking, even if nobody else sees the point yet. The more you protect your time and energy, the more space you create for something beyond just surviving your job. Space to plan, to learn a new skill, to slowly build another income stream, to remember who you were before your calendar filled with meetings. And if any of this resonates, if you feel how your lack of margin keeps you stuck, consider supporting this channel. Like this video, subscribe to Fog of Work, and share it with someone who is also tired of selling their life by the hour. It helps more people step out of the fog and see what is really happening. In a world where everything is financialized, discipline is not just a personal habit, it is a quiet form of rebellion. Late-stage capitalism needs you running on impulse and fear. It needs you chasing status symbols so you stay in debt. It needs you exhausted so you do not question the trade you are making. Your one life in exchange for a salary that barely keeps up with the chaos outside. A disciplined person is dangerous in the system. You are harder to threaten because you have some savings. You are harder to tempt because you are not desperate to feel rich for 10 minutes. You are harder to keep because you are not locked into a lifestyle that depends on every cent they pay you. This is why your digital world is full of tools designed to erode your discipline. Endless feeds, flash sales, limited time discounts, exclusive offers. The system will treat you like a child with no self-control, because that is exactly who it hopes you will be. Choosing discipline is choosing to become boringly, quietly powerful in a world that wants you weak and loud. Technology and artificial intelligence could have given us more time and peace. Instead, in the hands of corporations, they became weapons aimed at our attention and self-control. Your feeds are not random. They are carefully tuned to what keeps you hooked the longest. Recommendations nudge you toward content that keeps you scrolling, not content that helps you think. Shopping platforms subtly guide you toward higher margin products, not better choices for your future. Artificial intelligence writes targeted ads faster than any human copywriter, learning exactly which words push your emotional buttons. When you give up discipline in this environment, you are not just relaxing. You are surrendering control of your behavior to systems whose only goal is profit. You wake up, pick up your phone, and your day is immediately shaped by someone else's priorities. Real discipline in a world of AI and endless content means adding friction back on purpose. Turning off notifications, deleting apps that eat your time and money, using boring tools that do less but also demand less of you. It means deciding that your attention is not a free resource anyone can mine. The moment you start talking about discipline, people jump straight to extremes. Wake up at 4 a.m., never eat out, hustle every second. If you cannot do that, why bother? That mindset is another trap. You do not need to become a machine. You need to become slightly more reliable to your future self than the system expects. Maybe the first step is just tracking where your money actually goes for a month without judgment, so the fog lifts. Maybe it is setting a tiny automatic transfer to savings, even if it is the cost of one coffee. Maybe it is choosing one clear boundary at work, like no emails after a certain hour, and holding that line. Small discipline feels useless at first because nothing changes overnight. But something else is changing quietly: your identity. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of every temptation and every demand. You start to think of yourself as someone who protects their future, even when nobody is watching. The system wants you overwhelmed, so you never start. Starting small is already a refusal to play the role you were assigned. Discipline leads to wealth not because the world is fair, but because it is the only tool you have that compounds in your favor in a rigged game. Every controlled impulse, every saved dollar, every protected hour of rest or learning is a small vote for a different future. Wealth, in this sense, is not about becoming rich enough to join the people who run this system. It is about becoming free enough that you no longer live in constant fear of them. It is the ability to say no to a manager who crosses the line, to walk away from a job that is destroying you, to live in a way that is not dictated by the latest panic in your inbox. That is what we are trying to see together here on Fog of Work, the chains that are sold to us as rewards and the quiet ways we can start unhooking them. So let me leave you with a question. What is one act of discipline you wish you had started 5 years ago? And what is the smallest version of it you can start today? I always read every comment. Share your story, your struggles with discipline, your small victories. Someone else in the fog needs to hear it. And if this spoke to you, subscribe to Fog of Work, and then watch another video on the channel about wage slavery, late-stage capitalism, or the 40-hour work week. Keep pulling on the thread. The more clearly you see the game, the harder it becomes for anyone to own you.